Welcome to Write to Publish, your go-to podcast for all things writing and publishing. I'm Karen Stanley, a 14 times published author and the founder of Mabel and Stanley Publishing. Join me as I share a multitude of tips and insights drawn from my own writing and publishing journey. We'll be hearing from some inspirational authors too, who will share their writing experiences and top tips for success. Each week, we'll learn about an aspect of writing, from composition to genre and from publishing to marketing. Listen in as we learn and chat about all things writing and publishing, and let's get you on the right path. Welcome to another episode of Write to Publish with me, Karen Stanley. I hope you're all well wherever you are, and I hope that whatever writing project you're deep in at the moment, it's going well and you are continuing to find your writing mojo. It can be tricky sometimes. This week, it's a very short episode really, but I wanted to talk to you about the power of your writing tribe. Now, whatever pastime we have, it's important that we find a sense of community within that for most of us. So, for example, most of us will pursue or seek out some kind of hobby or pastime that involves meeting with like-minded people. So people who go to fitness groups, for example. There's a lovely little group who meet in a local cafe by me. They are a knitting group, and it's a bunch of usually ladies. I think there are sometimes the odd man, but generally ladies of a certain age, got a bit more time on their hands, and they meet at the cafe once a week, once a fortnight, and they all just sit around knitting. I think what a lovely way to spend a morning. Hugely creative. Now, you can do knitting at home. Of course you can. You can sit in your lounge by your fire and perhaps have a glass of wine on the side and do knitting. But there is a certain amount of pleasure to be had from engaging in that pastime with people who have similar interests to you, who might be able to give you a little bit of support with the latest pattern or the latest stitch, and you can just sit around and talk nonsense, or you can talk about knitting, or you can talk about patterns and garments and things that you've made and what have you. But human beings are by their nature generally quite sociable, so they like to find like-minded people to engage in things with, particularly leisure pursuits, when it's something that they do for pleasure. And there must be hundreds, mustn't there? There's my husband plays pool on a midweek night. He doesn't mind playing pool, but part of the reason he does that is because he goes out with the pool team. They all have a bit of a giggle. They're all engaging in something that they all enjoy and that they've got in common. All of those things bring you pleasure, and sometimes a pleasure shared is much more enjoyable than if you just, you can't really play pool on your own, but for example, with your knitting, yes, it's nice to relax, but it's also nice to share that. And there are hundreds and hundreds of groups: cycling groups, hiking groups, dog walking groups, reading groups, book clubs, all of the above. And so for that, finding your tribe is sometimes can be hugely helpful, and never more so than with writing. Finding your tribe for writing can really be crucial to your success. Partly because writing by its very nature is a very, very solitary pastime, isn't it? You sit down with a laptop, or my friend, she actually handwrites hers and then types them up. I can't think of anything worse than that. I like to type mine straight away. We're all very different. But the actual process of that writing is usually done for most people in complete silence. Might have the radio on, but generally most writers I've spoken to, they like no distractions, they like no noise. They like to get involved and immersed in whatever it is they're writing. So that, by its nature, is very, very solitary and, very quiet, very kind of introspective, isn't it? You're not engaging with anybody else at that point. And sometimes that path then can be a little bit lonely, and it can feel a little bit daunting. So when you're not in the actual throes of writing, it's really important to have a tribe of some kind. And this can look different for different people. It might be a group of you who meet at a local cafe. You might have a local writers group where you all network. It might be just one friend who happens to be a writer as well, and you meet up and you talk about writing. I've got a few friends now who I talked to writing about. A couple of ladies in particular, one of whom has been hugely supportive. She writes historical fiction. I'm going to be helping her to publish her book later this year. She's great. She's a real writer. She belongs to my writing membership community as well. I met her through another writer friend, and we've got a little WhatsApp group, ladies who walk and write, and we sometimes go and walk the dog, we have a stroll along the beach. But the idea is that we share our writing experience. We talk about where we've got to at the moment, any challenges we've got, any sort of hurdles we're facing, successes we've had, that kind of thing. It's really great, and it's been hugely cathartic for me to be able to talk to other people about writing, about how they view it, about how it challenges them, how it motivates them. It's just nice to have that kind of sounding board, as well as, my husband, bless him, long suffering, but sometimes I speak to him and I can physically see him glazing over. He's genuinely pretty interested, but it's not his passion, it's not his bag. So sometimes I'm chatting away and waxing lyrical about my latest project, and he's sort of being polite. And like if he talks to me about carpentry, I'll politely respond, and sometimes I might even have the odd notion what he's talking about, might be able to offer some suggestions. But in the main, I'm not really of much use to him because it's not my passion. It's not, this isn't rocket science, is it? So having people to speak to who are like-minded, who understand the challenges, and also who might have some brilliant suggestions is hugely valuable. So we sort of meet and talk and write. I also run my writing academy and my writing membership, so I'm quite lucky like that because I've built a community and I work as a writing mentor. I'm quite often talking about writing with other writers, and even though in the main that's me giving advice or support or guidance, that doesn't mean that quite often they'll kind of give me support and guidance even without realizing it in return, or they might make suggestions, or we might be able to talk about stuff, and I think, oh, that's a good idea, because I'm not conceited enough to think that I'm the only person who has ideas. It's lovely to speak with other people who have often brilliant ideas and things that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. So I'm quite lucky in that respect, because I run these groups. I do have access to writers. But my friend who writes historical fiction, we quite often will go for a walk with Mabel. We'll have a walk along the beach. We've frequented most of the decent coffee houses in the town. We eat a lot of cake, and we sit around and we just talk about writing. We talk about story plots and story arcs. One of the earlier episodes was talking about story arcs, and we've done some huge discussion about story arcs, about how to build them, how to make sure there's no gaps in them, how to make sure the pace is just right. Sometimes we talk about the mechanics of writing. We might talk about how we're getting on with self-promotion. We might talk about marketing, about publishing. I'm hugely grateful to her that she's this brilliant sounding board. And particularly when it comes to generating new ideas, I think in the last episode, I talked about the murder mystery that I'm currently trying to write. And it reached a real stumbling block, and it's been on the back burner for a couple of years, mainly because my business has been growing and I've been very consumed with other things. But I've now picked it back up and committed to finishing that. But I'd reached some real stumbling blocks with who did it. Who was the murderer? Who was the suspect? Who was this? Who was that? How would this be believable? How would that not be believable? And with my friend Sam, we had a massive discussion the other day on the beach whilst walking in the sunshine. Absolutely lovely place to do it. We usually meet in places where it's going to be quite boosting for our creativity. So either, a nice walk on the beach, nice walk in the woods, somewhere like that, which is really quite a sensory experience, and that's great for creativity. It's great to get out in the fresh air and get those body and mind working. But we spent most of the time discussing, how the person in the story could have done it. How were they going to have an alibi? How were they going to be the suspect? How was the reader going to think it was them or not think it was them? How was the policeman going to think it was them and then think it was someone else, or maybe not? We thrashed this out for a good hour or two. And a lot of the time, it's not always that you don't have the ideas. I had loads of ideas myself, but it's just lovely to have that creative sounding board. Someone who says, well, have you thought about that? Or, you might have missed a trick there. What about this? Or what about if he says this? Or what about if she does that? And it's so helpful and so productive to have that. So my advice to you would be, if you haven't got a writing tribe, find one. And it doesn't matter if you join a writing group. I run a writing membership group. So if you would be interested in that, please do get in touch. Karen at mabelandstanleypublishing.com. We have live Q&As. We have Zoom breakout rooms. We facilitate discussions between writers. If you don't want to join that, then, find a local writers group, or just find a friend who's interested, or another friend who writes or enjoys writing, or maybe even a friend who really enjoys reading. It's nice to sometimes have that perspective from, a slightly different perspective, but finding fellow writers is hugely beneficial. It's beneficial for your creativity. It's beneficial for your motivation. It's beneficial to kind of plug the gaps when you might have felt a little bit solitary and a little bit lonely, locked away in your writing shed. It's great for creative brain breaks and sensory breaks, which again is really good for writer's block, to get those juices flowing again. I just can't really stress how helpful it will be. And it was a long time. I think I'd got to about book 9 and I was almost ready to give up. And then I met a few really key people in my writing journey, people who offered me advice, people who offered me support, people who were there for me when I needed them. These people were instrumental to my success moving forward. And it took me, I was on about book 9 and I'd already given up when I found those people. And once I found my writing tribe, my writing and my writing process and everything that I'd struggled with just got much easier. Now, your tribe might be one person, it might be 2 people, it might be 10 people. It doesn't matter how big or small your tribe is. What matters is that you can trust them, that they're trustworthy, that they are going to give you honest feedback, but not unkind. We don't want any unkindness or anything making you feel rubbish about yourself, because that's really not good for the creative process. But you do want honest feedback. You don't want people who are just going to kind of, people please and just say, yeah. You want that little bit of resistance. You want people to sort of give you constructive criticism for your ideas. You want people to sort of argue with you a little bit, and you with them. So it needs to be people you can trust, people that you can have that frank discussion with, people you can, what my nan used to say, chew the fat, go over things. And sometimes it might be that you're just, discussing how to write dialogue, for example, if that's been an issue for you, or how you research your ideas, or what's your favorite way to compose your chapters structure, or it could be any form of writing. But in my experience, writers love talking about writing. It's hugely helpful. It's creativity inducing, if that is even a word. And it just helps when your mojo goes a little bit, or you've lost motivation, or you just need a creative sounding board. So my advice to you today would be, find your writing tribe. If you haven't got one, seek one out. And if you'd like to join the Mabel and Stanley writing and publishing community, you'll be very welcome. Just drop me a line, Karen at mabelandstanleypublishing.com. I'll also put the link in the comments here so that you can join the membership, or join our newsletter, and I'll be sending out different offers that we've got going on, or events or webinars or things that are happening in that group, so that you can kind of keep abreast of what's going on, keep abreast of developments, and make sure that you're in the loop. But regardless of whether you join my tribe or not, or our tribe, I like to say, find yourself a tribe. It's a solitary process, writing, and you'll find that your writing will take off in leaps and bounds. And it's always good to have fresh ideas. It's always good to have a fresh perspective, or a different view on things. So find your tribe, and if you haven't got one, seek one out. If you'd like to find one, get in touch, and you'll be very welcome. So happy writing, happy tribe finding, and I hope you form some really great friendships and partnerships, which I have done, for which I'm incredibly grateful. And they really bring value and richness to my writing life and my life in general. And I'd pretty much be lost without them at times. So find your tribe and get yourself on the right path. Lovely chatting to you again. See you all again soon.